Hello, Theo. It's Uncle Dajmek. I am going to be reading to you How the Grinch Stole Christmas. This was one of my favorite ones, and I really like the movies. There are multiple of them, so you should watch them. Every Who down in Whoville liked Christmas a lot. But the Grinch, who lived just north of Whoville, did not. The Grinch hated Christmas, the whole Christmas season. Now, please don't ask why. No one quite knows the reason. It could be his head wasn't screwed on just right. It could be perhaps that his shoes were too tight. But I think the most likely reason of all is that his heart was 2 sizes too small. But for whatever reason, his heart or his shoes, he stood there on Christmas Eve hating the Who's. Staring down from his cave with sour, Grinchy frown at a warm, lighted window below in their town. For every Who down in Whoville beneath was now busy hanging a mistletoe wreath. And they're hanging their stockings, he snarled with a sneer. Tomorrow is Christmas, it's practically here. Then he growled with his grinchy fingers nervously drumming, I must find some way to stop Christmas from coming. For tomorrow he knew all the Who girls and boys would wake bright and early. They'd rush for their toys. And then, oh, the noise, noise. That was one thing he hated. The noise. And then the Who's young and old would sit down to a feast, and they'd feast, and they'd feast, and they'd feast. And they would feast on Who pudding, on rare Who beast, which was something the Grinch could not stand in the least. And then they'd do something he liked least of all. Every Who down in Whoville, the tall and the small, would stand together with Christmas bells ringing. They'd stand hand in hand, and the Who's would start singing. They'd sing, and they'd sing, and they'd sing. And the more the Grinch thought of this Who Christmas sing, the more the Grinch thought, I must stop this whole thing. Why, for 53 years I've put up with it now. I must stop this Christmas from coming. But how? And then he got an idea. An awful idea. The Grinch got a wonderful, awful idea. I know just what to do, the Grinch laughed in his throat, and made a quick Santa Claus hat and coat. He chuckled and clucked, what a great Grinchy trick. With the coat and this hat, I'll look just like Saint Nick. All I need is a reindeer. The Grinch looked around, but since the reindeer are scarce, there were none to be found. Did that stop the old Grinch? No, the Grinch simply said, if I can't find a reindeer, I'll make one instead. So he called his dog Max, then took some red thread, and he began to tie a big horn on the top of his head. And then he loaded some bags and some old empty sacks on a ramshackle sleigh, and he hitched up old Max. Then the Grinch said, giddy up, and the sleigh started down towards the homes where the Who's lay a snooze in their town. All their windows were dark, quiet snow filled the air, all the Who's who were dreaming without care. Then he came to the first little house on the square. This is stop number 1, the Grinchy Claus hissed, and climbed to the roof, empty bag in his fist. Then he slid down the chimney, a rather tight pinch, but Santa could do it, then so could the Grinch. He got stuck only once for a moment or two, then he stuck his head out of the fireplace flue. There were little Who stockings all hung in a row. These stockings are the first thing to go. Then he slithered and slunk with a smile most unpleasant around the whole room, and he took every present. Pop guns, bicycles, roller skates, drum, checkerboard tricycles, popcorn, and plums. He stuffed them in the bag, then the Grinch very nimbly stuffed all of the bags up, one by one, up the chimney. He then slunk to the icebox, where he took the Who's feast. He took the Who pudding and the roast beast. He cleaned out the icebox as quick as a flash, while the Grinch even took their last can of Who hash. Then he stuffed all the food up the chimney with glee, and now, grinned the Grinch, I will stuff up the tree. Then the Grinch grabbed the tree and started to shove when he heard a small sound like a coo of a dove. He turned around fast when he saw a small Who. Little Cindy Lou Who was not more than 2. The Grinch had been caught by this tiny Who daughter, who got out of bed for a cup of cold water. She stared at the Grinch and said, Santa Claus, why? Why are you taking our Christmas tree? Why? But you know that old Grinch was so smart and so slick. He thought up a lie, and he thought of it quick. Why, my little sweet tot, the fake Santa Claus lied. There are lights on this tree that won't light on one side. So I'm taking it home to my workshop, my dear. I'll fix it up there, and I'll bring it back here. And then the fib fooled the child. Then he patted her head, and he got her a drink, and sent her to bed, and little Cindy Lou Who went to bed with her cup. He went to the chimney and stuffed the tree up. Then the last thing he took was the log for the fire. Then he went up the chimney himself, the old liar. On their walls he left nothing but hooks and some wire. And one speck of food that was left in the house was a crumb that was even too small for a mouse. Then he did the same thing to all the other Who's, leaving crumbs much too small for the other Who's mouses. It was 1:15 dawn, all the Who's still in bed, all the Who's still a snooze, when he packed up his sled. Packed it with their presents, ribbons and wrappings, their tags and their tinsels, and their trimmings and wrappings. 3,000 feet up the side of Mount Crumpet, he rode with his load to the top to dump it. Pooh-hoo to the Who's, was the Grinch grinnishly humming. They're finding out now that no Christmas is coming. They'll wake up, I just know what they'll do. Their mouths will hang open a minute or two. Then the Who's in Whoville will all cry, boo-hoo. That's the noise, the Grinch grinned. That's I simply must hear. So he paused, and the Grinch put a hand to his ear, and he did hear the sound rising over the snow. Then it started to grow. The sound wasn't sad. Why, the sound sounded merry. It couldn't be, but it was merry, very. He stared at the Whoville. The Grinch popped his eyes. Then he shook. What he saw was a shocking surprise. Every Who down in Whoville, the tall and the small, was singing without any presents at all. He hadn't stopped Christmas from coming. It came. Somehow or the other, it came just the same. And the Grinch, with his Grinch feet ice cold in the snow, stood puzzling and puzzling. How could it be so? It came without ribbons. It came without tags. It came without packages, boxes, or bags. Then he puzzled 3 hours till his puzzler was sore. Then the Grinch thought of something he hadn't before. Maybe Christmas, he thought, doesn't come from a store. Maybe Christmas, perhaps, means a little bit more. And then what happened? Well, in Whoville, they say, the Grinch's small heart grew 3 sizes that day. And the minute his heart didn't feel quite so tight, he whizzed with his load through the bright morning light and brought back the toys, the feast, the food for the feast, and he, himself, the Grinch, carved the roast beast. Bye, Theo.